started. Hi everyone, welcome to the Innovation and Collaboration Funding Information webinar. My name is Star Young and I am based at the University of Exeter. I am the Senior Project Manager for the UK Human Functional Genomics Initiative. And I'm really pleased to be able to deliver this webinar this afternoon to tell you about some funding that we have got that we'll be releasing and how you can apply for it. So the webinar is going to be recorded and it will be made available on the UK Human Functional Genomics website, as well as a set of the slides that I'm using today will be put up there as well. As well as there'll be some guidance and all of the associated forms that you need to be able to apply for the funding. I will go through the presentation to begin with, and then at the end there'll be an opportunity if people have got any questions, I will try and answer those for you. So for those of you who don't know about the UK Human Functional Genomics Initiative, I will just give you a little bit of information about that to set some background. So it is a new initiative and it's dedicated to characterising the functional consequences of diseases-associated genetic variation, and it was launched in September last year, initially for a 4-year period. So it benefited from £28.5 million of investment from the RC and also from BBSRC, alongside support from AstraZeneca, which went towards the Functional Genomics Screening Lab, which is based at the Milner. So the initiative is an open, collaborative network and it's spanning academia, industry and other non-academic partners, and it aims to accelerate the translation of functional genomic research into tangible benefits for health and well-being. So we have plans for expansion, including new clusters and new disease areas, as well as training. So just to give an overview of the structure and the partners already involved in the initiative. So I'm part of the Coordination Hub, which is based at the University of Exeter, alongside the director of the initiative, Professor Jonathan Mill. That's also where our Data Coordination Centre is based as well. So we have 4 funded research clusters at the moment. The first one of those being the Molecular Mechanisms Cluster, which is led by Professor Kenneth Bailey at the University of Edinburgh. They use human tissue genetics and artificial intelligence to explain the molecular mechanisms of a broad range of different diseases. Then we have the Functional Genomics of Post-Translationally Modified Proteins Cluster, which is led by Dr. Matthew Child, based at Imperial College, and that defines the biological consequence of genetic variants associated with rare diseases which alter amino acids and protein function. Then we've got the Musculoskeletal Disease Cluster, which is based at Oxford University and led by Professor Dominic Furness, which aims to use functional genomics to generate novel therapeutic targets. And then lastly, we have the Human Brain Development Cluster, which is led by King's College, and the co-Is on that are Professor Oscar Marin and Professor Deepak Shrivastava. And they were using brain organoid models to explore genetic variants associated with neurodevelopmental disorders. Alongside that, we also have the Functional Genomics Screening Lab, which I've mentioned already, which is based at the Milner Institute in Cambridge, led by Dr. Nicola McCarthy, and uses complex human in vitro models for array CRISPR screening and high-content functional readouts to better understand model biology and enable target identification. And the Screening Lab does also run funding calls, which are available on our website and on the Milner website as well. So just there's a QR code for our link tree and a visual of the different partners that we have within the initiative. So just an overview of what the initiative aims to do and what we will do. So catalyse discoveries into the mechanistic underpinnings of health and disease, identify causal variants and modelling their impact in disease-relevant cell types across key stages of development, characterise the mechanisms by which genetic variation impacts on phenotypes, so cell types, developmental stages and physiological systems. It will leverage technological advances in genomics, so sequencing, using epigenomics, transcriptional variation, and single-cell and spatial models, and also leverage advances in functional genomic screening, so looking at disease-relevant models and also multimodal readouts. So we're looking to leverage the UK's world-leading genetically informative cohorts and juggle the expertise and capacity in data science and AI. So about the funding then, we have funds available to foster innovation and collaboration. So the ambition is to foster collaboration and innovation across existing centres and partners, but also to expand the initiative to include additional members, so to go out across the UK. So this is an initiative that does represent UK human functional genomics. So our aim is to make the initiative an open community for anyone in the UK who's working on human functional genomics, and it's open, the funding is open to all UK-based scientists with an academic affiliation who signed up to be functional genomics or FGX associate researchers, which is very simple. It just means signing up via our website. So the projects must be aligned to the goals of the initiative and be within the remit of the MRC, which I'll talk about in a moment. And applicants are encouraged to highlight synergies with clusters or the Data Coordination Centre if that's what they're looking to partner with, although this is not a prerequisite of the funding. So there will be technology priming projects that support the initiative. Functional genomic screening lab or a specific research cluster are also welcome, and projects that offer to bring in specific knowledge or contributions to the initiative are encouraged. So there are two pots of funding, and I'll go through the first one, but essentially the first one is for academics solely in their own right, and the second is for academics working with industry. So the innovation and collaboration funding solely for academics is open to academics in the UK, and we would particularly encourage applications from early career researchers. The projects should build and strengthen collaborations across the initiative and across the UK through feasibility, pilot or initial studies to provide preliminary experiments to explore ideas and generate initial data, which could support the development of competitive collaborative grant proposals for longer term projects. Areas of potential interest include, but are not limited to, the generation of novel functional genomic annotations in disease-relevant cell types, development of novel methods, functional perturbation of disease systems, development of models for functional genomics, data science, and computational approaches for functional genomics. So we're really looking for the opportunities to develop in emerging opportunities. So the standard award levels range from £15,000 to £50,000, but up to £100,000 by exception. And funded projects will be expected to sign up to data sharing standards established by the Data Coordination Centre, which includes open sharing of protocols, experimental metadata, raw data, and code. And awardees would be expected to present their results at the next Functional Genomics Scientific Symposium. So alongside this, we're also launching the Industry Partnership Awards. So these are awarded to the academic institution for the development of important links between business and the initiative to extend knowledge exchange with business and promoting the translation of research. So the expectation is that the funding that would be applied for by the academic would have that matched funding, cash or in kind, by an industry collaborator. So the project should build and strengthen, again, collaborations between the initiative and businesses through feasibility, pilot or initial studies to provide preliminary experiments to explore ideas and generate initial data, which again could support the development of competitive collaborative grant proposals and longer term projects. So again, the awards value of £15,000 to £100,000, ideally 15 to 50, but £100,000 by exception, with the expectation that the industry partner would contribute the same or more in match, whether that's cash or in kind. So the academics will be expected to adhere to the standard MRC industry collaboration framework, and awardees will be expected again to sign up to the Functional Genomics data sharing standards and to present at the annual symposium. So the conditions of the funding, the funding available has come from the MRC, so we're adhering to the MRC funding principles with this. So the grant may be used to support the following. So direct project costs. So 100% directly incurred and directly allocated project costs can be claimed, including staff time, travel and subsistence on the individual feasibility or pilot projects. It does cover the cost of networking activities, including travel and subsistence as well. This grant may not be used to support duplication or other sources of funding that would be more appropriate for the activity to be funded. It does not cover indirect or estates costs at the research organisation, and that's quite an important one to highlight if you are looking to put on any staff costs. So it does not cover any cost relating to intellectual property protection, including but not limited to registering, maintaining, or supporting patents or property rights. And it will not fund any equipment costs with a value of £10,000 or more. So it will only cover small equipment for less than £10,000. The funding cannot be used to support any undergraduate or postgraduate activities or training. So that includes any core PhD training, including tuition or bench fees. And it does not include contributions to existing knowledge transfer partnerships. So to apply for the funding, we've tried to make it as light touch and as nimble as possible. So applications will be collected through a form which is hosted on the UK Functional Genomics website. And once that's been completed, it's a Word document. Once that's been completed, it needs to be emailed to fgxfunding@exeter.ac.uk. There is the option to attach additional information, so images, budget details, letters of support, and applications can be submitted from any time from Wednesday morning this week until midnight on Monday the 29th of September. You will get an email within 3 working days saying that we have acknowledged and we have received your application. There are some word counts within the application form as well that I would ask you to make note of and to consider, as we are expecting a number of applications. So if we can stick within the word count, that would be really helpful. So for the review process, once we've received all of the applications, once the deadline has passed, the UKRI principles of assessment and decision making will be used when reviewing these and then later deciding on the funding outcomes for each application. So there is a link there so you can review those yourselves, but in short, the key principles are expert assessment, transparency, impartiality, appropriateness, confidentiality, integrity and ethics, equality, diversity and inclusion, and separation of duties. Once all applications have been reviewed and the panel have made their decision, all applications will be informed of the panel decision. Applicants can ask for any comments or feedback recorded as part of the review process, and the agenda and comments section of the review forms will be retained under current MRC guidelines for documentation retention. Successful projects will be expected to complete a project agreement and set a start date within 3 months of being offered the award. The project duration will generally be 1 year, but it can be anything from 3 months up until 1 year. And during the project, successful applicants will be expected to provide a short quarterly update on progress. Submission of this report will be required for funding for each quarter to be invoiced, which will be invoiced in arrears. Any unspent funds at the end of the project will be returned to and held by the initiative. At the end of the project, a final project report is required and awardees will be asked to present an overview of their project at the next symposium. So just to go over the timelines again for you. So the grant call officially opens on Wednesday on the 9th. The deadline is midnight on the 29th of September. Mid-October, the panel will meet, reviewed all of the applications, and the funding decisions will be announced at the beginning of November. The earliest project start date would be the beginning of January 2026, although I would anticipate it might take slightly longer, depending on the arranging between the different institutions and the agreement on the project template. So other than the funding, there are lots of other ways to get involved with the initiative. So you can sign up to become an associate member. We will have seminars, training events and an annual symposium. You can collaborate with the clusters and with the Functional Genomics Screening Lab, either through this vehicle or through talking with us. Collaborate with our Data Coordination Centre, join our ECR network and talk to myself and to John or the other cluster leads for new ideas about clusters. And the final slide, again, just showing how you can register for the mailing list, although I think probably most people, if you've signed up for this, you have already, you've come to it through the mailing list and also our partners. And with that, I will stop sharing and go out to any questions. I haven't been checking the chat though, so I'll just check to see if there's anything there.